This is the city, imposing in scale, bustling with human activity, prosperous to its human inhabitants. It is the shining simulacrum of mankind's achievements. And yet, my heart yearns for something different, something just as imposing in scale, something that is bustling with a different kind of activity, something that is prosperous to all its inhabitants, something that requires my full participation for me to exist in it. Something like this. This is raw land in the Missouri Ozarks. It is for sale, and it's the second property we've looked at. This property is over 250 acres with over 1,700 feet of river frontage. It's also so dense that to really see the property will take an afternoon's hike, so we're going to have to circle back on this one. To be clear, I am no Luddite. I appreciate technology. My career has been built on it, and because of it, I can live a life nearly free from the trappings of the modern world. But when I stand back on the precipice of a city like Los Angeles, I feel a sense of foreboding, as if some ancient ancestral warning is screaming out through my DNA. This place is dangerous. It cannot be sustained. Do not enter. If entered, do not stay. Technology is amoral. It can be used for good or for ill. To me, the proper use of technology is to promote and build a future which values individual freedom, decentralizes power, and increases sustainability of our use of resources. Unfortunately, it would appear that most of the world is heading in the opposite direction. You might think that I think everyone should move to the countryside. This would be false. We must each make our own decisions in life. Ideally, we make those decisions to move us toward living a life aligned with our values. I know what I value. What do you value?
Mental note to self. Guy ever says, you want to go up to this trail?
You worried about getting scratches?
It'll be no big deal. I'm going to say, yeah, we'll just walk.
Oh, that was a big one.
It was in good condition before we went through the woods.
Seriously, he said it gets better, and this is like...
See, it's better in this 5-foot area.
Branches are touching each other across. They're intertwined up there. Oh. I don't know how his little Jeep does any better.
No.
No.
Yeah, college shenanigans.
Yeah. There's a reason why he didn't tell us that we had this property available to look at until he saw what we were driving today.
Yes, right, because if it would have been a minivan,
he'd have been like,
yeah, we can't get up there. I mean, this isn't...
This is tight.
This isn't tight at all.
Oh,
Part of me is trying to decide if I go faster through the scrapes, does that make it worse? Or
it's kind of like Mythbusters with their do you run through the rain or walk?
Scratching the car, scratching the car, scratching the car, scratching the car, scratching the car. We like to scratch our cars. Scratching the car, scratching the car. We like to scratch our cars. Okay, we made it. That guy's listening to us in the car. He's like, these people are crazy. I mean, I'm weird. Well, these people are nuts.
I may not be a Luddite, but I am an introvert. I sometimes think that just means I'm extremely sensitive to people and their emotions. So sensitive that spending time around them wears me down. It's not that I don't enjoy people. It's that I only have so much to give them. At my core, I just want to be left alone like a hermit to think deeply, learn, and create without interference from the influence of others. None of this is new. Since I was a kid, I never fit in with the crowd. The pressure of seeking social approval always seemed like a Faustian bargain to me. If you seek it, you just might find it, only to realize that the person you become isn't actually the person who you are. But in a place like this, There is no crowd. Nobody cares what I'm doing here because there is no one here to care. Maybe this is less noble than being yourself in the midst of the masses. I'm not really sure. But I'm a pragmatist. I want to do what works. And what works for me to be me is to live a life of seclusion. This is where I feel the most free. This is where I feel the most like me. This is where I feel the closest to the truth of our existence. The reality of nature is that it doesn't care about you or what you think. Out here, reality is everywhere. All of the nonsense that we can convince ourselves of in places removed from the natural order are stripped away here. There are no senior citizen deer. In nature, the weak become food for another animal, and in so doing start a cycle of regeneration and rebirth. Nature is beautiful, awe-inspiring, sustainable, regenerative, and at the same time brutal. It's honest. Honest in a way that is offensive to some who have spent too much of their lives living in the illusion of the modern world. I'm not saying that we can't see the truth when we live in the luxury of the cities. I have many friends like Natalie from Hey It's a Good Life and Kira at Homestead Dreaming who are doing their part while living smack dab in the middle of very large ones. I'm also not saying everyone who lives in the country sees the truth. There are a lot of farmers who are strip mining the land's topsoil without returning anything to it, assuming that the land will always produce, that the chemical fertilizers will always grow food, and never concerning themselves with the destruction of the soil that took millions of bison thousands of years to create. What I'm saying is that modern life is seductive and illusory by nature, and it's easier to see reality when you put yourself in a place where you can observe it firsthand. We've been looking at a lot of properties where that reality is evident everywhere, if you just look. Searching has become a full-time job. We've had more than our fair share of 5 a.m. wake-up calls, hastily packed lunches, and enough espresso to make any Italian cringe. At least we found a great natural food store in Branson. Having access to quality food for dinner made our search just a little bit easier. One of the things we've been looking for is a property with river frontage. Unfortunately, most of the so-called river properties are nothing more than wet weather creeks. Fortunately for us, we happened to come looking at properties here after 3 months of absolutely no rain, which is the main reason we know that most of the properties don't actually have flowing water. After weeks of looking and 1,000 miles on the truck, we were able to only find 3 properties that fit what we were looking for. More than 100 acres, river frontage, timber for building, elevation change for gravity water supply, enough flat land for livestock, and close enough to the modern conveniences that will make our initial move less difficult. There can be a balance between modernity and nature. We can create a future where the majority of our lives are spent creating and building things which promote life, where the only depleting and destructive actions we take are those which promote regeneration. Lest I be misunderstood, I think it's important to make a definition here. The title of this video is about finding freedom, and yet I'm not promoting freedom as you may understand it. I'm not telling you to do whatever you want. Why? Well, I once met a man named Russell Means. I met him about a year before he died, and he told me something that has stuck with me. Russell was a big man, physically and in spirit. He preferred being called an Indian. I'm an Indian, not a Native American, he said to me. He was an actor, author, and a leader in the American Indian movement of the 1970s. He stood up to the U.S. government and exchanged gunfire with the FBI at Wounded Knee and somehow didn't end up in prison for the rest of his life. Some would call him a terrorist. Others would call him a hero. To me, he was just a kind man that I met who took a liking to me. At least enough of a liking to give me the following advice. Freedom is the most important thing, he said, but your freedom is the freedom to act responsibly. It is my belief that we humans have been created as God's image on earth. We were created to be his stewards of this planet. We were put here to do what God would do if he were here. Paradise can be found, or it can be built. But destruction requires nothing more than consumption and apathy. We each get to choose if we're going to make our little slice of this world into paradise or choose the default and consume until there's nothing left. It's time to claim your birthright and start making your part of the world better, wherever that may be. This isn't easy, but I have a feeling you're not looking for easy. So I give you this challenge. Grab hold of today and make it better. Oh, and one more thing. One of the properties in this episode is our future home.